My parents said I failed. Then my brother's fiancée looked at me and said, "You're the CEO?" I still remember the exact moment everything changed. Not the day I launched my company, not even when it hit its first million in revenue. The real shift came at my parents' house, over dry chicken and passive-aggressive small talk, when my brother's fiancée turned to me with wide eyes and asked, "You're the CEO?" But let me rewind a bit. Growing up in my family was like being drafted into a team you didn't try out for. My parents had rules, expectations, and a checklist for what a successful life looked like. College at an Ivy, a career in law or medicine, a house in the suburbs, and a family by 30. Anything else? Failure. I wasn't the golden child. That was always Adam, my older brother. Captain of the swim team, valedictorian, Stanford Law. He walked the exact path they laid out, checking every box. Me? I liked tinkering with computers, staying up, late coding things that didn't make sense to anyone else, and skipping school dances to work on projects that never seemed to go anywhere, at least in their eyes. I remember when I told them I wasn't going to college. The silence at the dinner table was heavier than any shouting could have been. My mother blinked like she was trying to clear her vision. My father put his fork down and said, "You'll regret this decision." They didn't say much after that. Just cold nods at holidays and occasional texts that felt more like obligations than check-ins. Meanwhile, I rented a room in a sketchy part of the city, lived off instant noodles, and coded every waking hour. I freelanced, crashed startup meetups, pitched terrible ideas, and failed more times than I care to admit. But each failure taught me something. Eventually, I built an app that helped small businesses manage payments and contracts without the usual mess of paperwork. I called it Paper Trail, a boring name, but the product worked. At first, it was just me and 2 friends from the local developer scene, working out of a coffee shop. Then we got our first client, then 5 more, then 100. After a year, we were profitable. After 2, we had investors knocking on our door. I stayed quiet about it. I knew my parents wouldn't understand or care. When Adam announced he was getting married, my parents went into full celebration mode. A garden wedding, custom floral arrangements, guest list management software, the works. Naturally, there was a big family dinner a few weeks before the wedding, and I was invited. Out. Of obligation, I assumed. It had been over a year since I saw them all in one place. I pulled up in a black Tesla Model Y, parked it discreetly a few houses down, and walked the rest of the way. The house looked the same, but it felt foreign. My mother greeted me at the door with a tight-lipped smile, like she wasn't sure how to react. My father barely looked up from his glass of wine. Adam, of course, gave me that polished, professional grin. "Hey, glad you could make it," he said, slapping my back like I was a distant cousin. Then I saw her, Elena. She was beautiful, in a crisp and natural kind of way, not trying too hard. Dark hair pulled back, a confidence in her eyes that suggested she was used to being the smartest person in the room. We shook hands, and I could tell she was genuinely curious about me, which caught me off guard. "So, what do you do?" she asked after dinner as we stood near the back porch. Before I could answer, my mother cut in with a practiced smile. "He's still figuring it out," she said quickly, like it was something to be embarrassed about. I felt the familiar wave of shame trying to creep in, but I smiled through it. "Actually," I said, "I run a tech company. We help small businesses manage payments and legal documents. We've got over 10,000 users." Elena's eyes sharpened. "What's it called?" "Paper Trail." She blinked. "Wait, seriously? Paper Trail? I use that. My dad's construction company swears by it. I thought it was run by some Silicon Valley firm." "Nope. Started it myself. Still run it. We're HQ'd downtown." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled slowly. "You're the CEO?" The room went quiet. My mother, halfway through a glass of wine, froze. My father actually set down his phone. Adam's fiancée had just pulled the pin on a grenade, and no one knew how to respond. "Yes," I said simply. Elena turned to Adam. "Did you know your brother's company has a valuation in the tens of millions?" Adam looked caught off guard. "I didn't realize." I wasn't sure whether he was genuinely surprised or just embarrassed. It didn't matter. The air had changed. My parents looked at me like they were seeing a stranger. Maybe they were. Later that night, as I was helping clear plates, my mom approached me in the kitchen. "You never told us," she said quietly. "You never asked," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated. "We thought you were struggling." I nodded. I was, for a while. But sometimes that's part of the process. There was a long silence between us. Then she said something I never expected. "I'm proud of you." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it meant something. The next few days were weird. My dad actually called me, not to interrogate me, but to ask how things worked in my business. He wanted to understand what you're doing. It was like watching a glacier melt, slowly but undeniably. The wedding came and went, and I played my role. I shook hands, gave a decent toast, and avoided the dance floor. Elena and I spoke a few more times. She was sharp, ambitious, and kind. She said something that stuck with me. "Your story's not just a comeback," she told me. "It's proof that there's more than one way to be successful. Your parents needed to see that." Maybe she was right. A few months later, my mom asked me to come speak at a career day event at the local high school. I almost laughed. The same woman who once begged me to go back to school now wanted me to inspire others. But I agreed. Not because I needed validation, but because I remembered being that kid, uncertain, dismissed, and dreaming about building something no one else could see. When I got up to speak, I didn't talk about money or titles. I talked about failure, about how it shaped me more than any classroom ever could. I told them about the ramen, the late nights, the projects that flopped, and the people who didn't believe in me. I told them that sometimes the path doesn't have a map. You build it as you go. Afterward, a student came up to me. She said she wanted to start a nonprofit for kids with disabilities, but everyone kept telling her to do something more practical. I told her, practical doesn't mean safe. It just means someone else already did it. She smiled. "Thank you." As I drove away, I thought about that night at my parents' house, about the look on Elena's face when she realized who I was. Not the screw-up younger brother, but the person who built something from nothing. And I realized something important. I didn't need their validation anymore, but it still felt good to have it. Now, when people ask me what I do, I tell them the truth. I run a company I built from scratch. I failed. A lot. I disappointed people, especially the ones closest to me. But I never stopped believing in what I was doing. And sometimes when your own family sees you as a failure, it takes a stranger to remind them and you just how far you've come.